Okay, this is the last of a series of 4 videos that I'm doing about the history of buildings on Pearl Street in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm really focusing on lost buildings, and this time I'll be talking about the south side of Pearl Street between Trumbull and Jewel Streets, right across from Bushnell Park. The lost buildings include a former jail that became the home of a prominent Hartford printing firm, a building erected for a notable Armenian American rug dealer, an African American church with a long history in the city, the Y.M.C.A. building, the demolition of which galvanized the historic preservation movement in Hartford, and the telephone building where the Hello Girls worked. Today, on the southwest corner of Pearl and Trumbull Streets, is a building that was erected in 1973 for the Southern New England Telephone Company. It's now used by Frontier. Going back over 200 years ago, there was a gambrel-roofed building here. It was the Hartford County Jail, erected in 1793 to 94. In fact, in the years after the Revolutionary War, Pearl Street was known as Prison Street. The second floor of the building had a tavern called City Hall, often frequented by gentlemen who had been imprisoned for debt. The jail moved out in 1837 to a location further down Pearl Street where the Y.M.C.A. would later be built. From 1838, the former jail was used by a printing company that would eventually take the name Case, Lockwood, and Brainard. The company erected a structure called the City Bindery just next door in 1865. The following year, work commenced to replace the old jail with a new building, but workers excavated too close to the north wall of the City Bindery. It dramatically collapsed on the morning of May 3, 1866. Luckily, it happened at 2 a.m., so no one was harmed. But the loud crash awakened nearby residents, who assumed there had been an earthquake. Work quickly resumed, and the completed Case, Lockwood, and Brainard building would continue to exist here until it was demolished in 1928. Turning back to a circa 1865 view of the old jail, the next building on Pearl Street, west of the Case, Lockwood, and Brainard property, was a carriage repository built in 1836 in the Greek Revival style, and west of that was a school building. I'm not sure when that school building was built exactly, but by the late 19th century it was used as an annex of the Brown School, which was located on Market Street. By around the year 1900, the building had become a Turkish Bath House. It was replaced in 1910 by the Donchian building, which was designed by Hartford architect Isaac A. Allen, Jr. for the Armenian American rug merchant Samuel B. Donchian, who'd already had his store at 76 Pearl Street for 26 years. He had an extensive business that included providing rugs for the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. As the Hartford Courant reported on October 16, 1909, quote, "The building itself is to be a pretentious structure, running from Pearl to Hicks Street. The front of the building, facing on Pearl Street, will be 2 stories in height, designed to permit the addition of at least 2 more stories when the occasion demands. Behind that comes the gallery, which is to be used for the display rooms for Mr. Donchian's Oriental rugs. This is a single story in height and will have a monitor roof. Back of that is the work and storeroom building, 4 stories in height, also with a monitor roof. And next comes a single-story part to be used for the washroom. It, like the gallery and the workrooms, has a monitor roof. The whole length of the building will be 235 feet. unquote. The new building did not open without incident. As the Current reported on April 14, 1910, quote, Timothy Horrigan, an ironworker, went to Samuel B. Donchian's new building on Pearl Street yesterday afternoon and asked for a job. He did not get it, but got into an argument with the foreman. To emphasize his argument, he threw a stone at the foreman's head, it is alleged. It missed the foreman and went through a large plate glass window which had just been put in place. Horrigan did not wait to see what would happen, but disappeared down an alleyway into Hicks Street and then into another alleyway. When the patrol wagon arrived with a batch of policemen in it, they started a serpentine chase through alleyways and backyards to catch up with him, and emerged on Jewel Street in time to see Mr. Horrigan doing a hot foot race around the Capitol towards Capitol Avenue. With a chug-chug, the wagon started around, and when it got to the avenue, Horrigan was again out of sight. Somebody had seen him go towards the new state library on the Oak Street side, so the cops went there too. There the workmen had seen him disappear into the library. The cops called a meeting of the strategy board and decided to attack the stronghold from all four sides and cut off escape. They did not see anyone trying to escape, however, and did not find Horrigan. Finally, they concentrated their efforts on the sub-cellar and found the fugitive in a remote corner of it. He was locked up for assault and battery and injury to private property. The window was worth several $100s, unquote. The Donchian store moved to Bloomfield in 1970, and the building was acquired by Southern New England Telephone. Just east of it, where the old carriage repository had stood, S&ET erected the six-story telephone building in 1912. An entire floor of the building was dedicated to the company's massive switchboard, while another floor was designed specifically to accommodate the 250 women known as Hello Girls who operated it. On March 18, 1914, the Current ran a story about these accommodations. Quote, up on the fourth floor of the big new exchange building on Pearl Street are the gathering rooms of the young women. The world of business is shut out once the elevator door has slammed shut, and a suite of cozy rooms invites and welcomes restfulness, unquote. What was called the rest room featured a big open fireplace and, quote, in one corner is a piano upon which the girls interpret everything from syncopated ragtimes to etudes. Big, generous armchairs stand about the room, and these are generally occupied by members of the force who are off duty, sewing, chatting, and happy, unquote. Other amenities included a reading room, a lunch room, up-to-date showers and washroom, even a small hospital. The Current also noted, quote, off the rest and reading rooms is the locker room, where are long lines of ventilated steel lockers, sanitary cages in which the operators lock their belongings while at the switchboard and leave their headsets and transmitters when the day's work is done. They are very particular about these headsets and cannot work without the one which has become fitted by long wear. There is nothing, say the operators, so exasperating, not even the man who insists that a line is clear when it is busy, as to have their headsets appropriated and a strange one left instead, unquote. The Current considered the telephone company to be head and shoulders above all other workplaces in terms of worker welfare in the city. A substantial rear addition was constructed in 1920, which also entailed an expansion of the workers' off-duty rest and recreation facilities, which now covered 2 floors and included a recreation room with a piano, phonograph, and dance floor, but also another quiet room, a large assembly hall, and separate dining rooms for male and female employees. The Donchian and telephone buildings were demolished by SNET in about 1994. Just west of these lost buildings are three historic structures that do survive today. There's the building at 215 Pearl Street, designed by Milton E. Hayman. It opened in 1924 as the Unitarian Church. In 1962, it became Ados Israel Synagogue, which was Hartford's first Orthodox Jewish congregation when it was organized in 1872. When the congregation left in 1986, it was the last synagogue in the city of Hartford. The next two buildings on the block before Ann Street are the 1927 Hartford City Gaslight Building, now City Arts on Pearl and home to Theater Works, and the telephone company's previous home on Pearl Street, erected in 1890, which was the company's home for over 2 decades. Just west of the intersection with Ann Street is the former Hartford Fire Department headquarters building. Back in the 19th century, though, this was the location of one of Hartford's most historic churches. Hartford's African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church began in the 1830s and for about 2 decades had a church on Elm Street. The congregation built a church on Pearl Street in 1857. This is an image of the church at the end of the 19th century. Just west of it was Hayden Hook and Ladder Truck House, a firehouse also dating to the 1850s. On the left is a list of the company's personnel and all of its property from the Hartford Municipal Register of 1875. It notes such items as 3 hay rakes, 2 snow shovels, 8 sheets, 1 dust brush, 2 mattresses, 2 pillows, 4 pillowcases, 2 bars of soap, 3 spittoons, 15 spoons, and 2 horse blankets, among other things. This building was also the city's fire department headquarters, and on this site was built the new Fire HQ in 1918, which was expanded in 1927. As I mentioned, the building survives today, and it was still used by the fire department until 2020. Let's go back to the view of that same corner in the 1890s, when the A.M.E. Zion Church and the old fire station stood there. The Italianate-style church building was replaced in 1900 by a new Gothic Revival-style church, which stood here for a quarter century before it was demolished and the fire station expanded in the mid-1920s. The congregation, now called the Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church, moved into its current home, a building on Main Street erected by the North Methodist Church in 1874. West of the Fire HQ, on the corner of Pearl and Jewel Streets, across from Bushnell Park, where there is now a parking lot, once stood one of Hartford's great architectural landmarks, the 1893 Y.M.C.A. building, designed by Edward T. Hapgood. This later postcard shows the rear addition that was constructed in 1914. This building, together with the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Arch and the Park River, formed a picturesque grouping in postcards. The demolition of the Y.M.C.A. building in 1974 galvanized local preservationists and led to the creation of the now defunct Hartford Architecture Conservancy. As usual, I want to thank you all for watching. Please consider liking this video, and if you enjoyed it, you can also leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.